Welcome to the CIH Path to Wellness podcast. Today's episode is all about the powerful connection between gut health and energy. Our guests, Isabel Smith and Araceli Benavides, share expert insights on how digestion influences everything, from brain function to daily vitality. Let's dive right in.
Hey everyone, great to see you both. Isabel, thank you so much for coming on today. And Araceli, always great to see you as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. So fun.
Yes, so excited to have this talk with you both.
So as we were talking offline, this is going to be a jazz improv type of episode, and trying to brainstorm kind of what to talk about. But it's really all about energy and feeling well, feeling alive. And right now, as we're recording this, it's about 30 degrees outside or something. So we're kind of like let's kind of warm this up with our podcast today. We want to unlock our energy, our brain health, our vitality by really healing our gut. And we know that from Hippocrates, from all the way to now functional medicine, functional nutrition, and, even people that are Googling things, right? That, the gut is the foundation of health. And I'd love to hear from both of you about, let's start with broad, questions first, and then we'll kind of get into the jazz riffs, if you don't mind. But maybe to start with Isabel here. I know you have your own amazing podcast and, following and amazing stuff, and you're an inspiration to us. So again, thanks for being on today. But for you, how does gut health influence energy levels and brain function? What are your thoughts there?
So the gut is right. When in doubt, check the gut. So, I can speak to from my own perspective just as like a person, not a practitioner, but like my gut has been one of my largest issues and also completely silent in my own journey. In fact, like I really have never had gut symptoms, but can tell you that it is the majority of the place where my problems lie. So I think that's just like a really important piece to jump off here with, which is like, if you're tired, if you're foggy, if you're, anything, your gut is probably involved, right? And I think that can be really obvious for some people when they're like, oh, I'm bloated, I'm constipated, I'm whatever. But for those of you guys out there who have health related issues going on and your gut is not particularly noisy, don't forget that the gut probably is implicated in some or a lot of what's going on in your body. So when we're thinking about like energy and the gut, I'm thinking about absorption, right? Like the gut is where we absorb our nutrition. And more important than ever is the fact that our food doesn't typically have as much nutrition in it as it once did. So people are needing more nutrition from their food as at baseline, I'm finding, in order to get what we need. So we have absorption. If there's something going on in your gut, whether you feel it or not, you might not be absorbing as well as you possibly could. And that's going to impair the possibility for you to have super good nutritional status in your body. So that's the first thing. To take it a step further, maybe somebody's got dysbiosis or history of SIBO or SIFO or GERD or H. pylori or something like that. That's also going to impair, your absorption. And so from my perspective, a lot of energy at baseline, something to think about is like, how am I absorbing? Am I either getting enough nutrition? Am I absorbing enough nutrition? Or is there something going on in that realm? Does that kind of answer your question from an energy perspective?
Yes, I mean, it makes total sense because the gut is where, a lot of our energy is absorbed. I'd love to follow up with that, Isabel, and I know we were talking about this offline, but you mentioned that you've been having, to the degree that you'd like to share this, of course, on a podcast, but, your own journey, I mean, you're a functional nutritionist, one of leading experts and influencers out there on this, and have your own clinical practice as well on your own podcast. So I'm curious, with this other question about common signs of poor gut health, I love the fact that you mentioned up front that it doesn't have to be gut symptoms. You're having these other. So how'd you figure that out, number one, and, maybe how you healed your own gut too?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a person. So like I was stubborn about being like, my gut's a problem, right? Because I'm like, I don't have these gut symptoms, but I'm tired and my brain's foggy and I have histamine overload and I've got Lyme disease and I've got mold toxicity and I have anaphylaxis at some point, right? My gut's not the problem. And then one day I was like, you idiot, in a more gentle, loving way. Come on, don't be so stubborn. You need to look in your gut because you've done all these other things and you're a certain way better, right? But you're not where you want to be. So for me, it was like I was having a lot of histamine, overproduction and intolerance. I was having new anaphylaxis. I was having fatigue. My hair was falling out at some point. Those are some of the very common ones that I find, right? Any trouble with weight, any trouble with anxiety. I have a lovely little puppy who's barking at my feet, so I'm sorry in advance if you so, trouble with your nails. Maybe your nails are not thick and happy. Maybe your hair is not thick and happy. Maybe you've got skin stuff. Maybe you've got acne. Maybe you're having trouble losing weight. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you have food sensitivities, right? Those would be cues to me. Chronic inflammation, autoimmune stuff, Hashimoto's, hormone problems, gut.
Well, we can get more into that, but that's really I'm just thinking about this. Any chronic condition where someone has some imbalance in the system, either a deficiency or an excess, got to look to the gut first.
100%.
Thank you. Araceli, your thoughts on also gut health and energy and brain function. I know that we met at Georgetown during the learning neurology. So your thoughts on how gut health has really influenced energy levels and brain function too.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I totally agree with everything Isabel was talking about, because we see that with patients over and over again. At the beginning, there might be some resistance to actually get them to look at their gut and do maybe some microbiome testing and identify what might be going on and see how that's impacting their health. But we look at gut health with every patient. So it's so important for everyone, regardless of what the symptoms. And I've been always fascinated by the gut-brain connection and how much that can impact. And it's a two-way street, right? Our emotions and our feelings can impact our gut. And I see that over and over when I'm treating patients with chronic digestive issues. And we get to the point that we've used many different techniques to heal the gut, from herbs to nutrition to different nutrients. And then they don't address the stress or their anxiety. And then it comes over and over. So that stress can impact our ability to produce stomach acid, to produce digestive enzymes, for our motility to be working properly. So we have that one way that our stress can affect our digestion. But at the same time, the balance of our microbiome can also affect how are we producing neurotransmitters and how are we feeling. If our vagus nerve is if we have a good vagus tone, how is that communication working properly? So really looking at both sides of the street and just kind of rebalancing. I recommend a lot of different vagus nerve exercises to try to rebalance that side of the nervous system and help both the way that we feel from a mood perspective as well as our digestion, that it's so tightly together. And of course, when we feel better in that regards, we are more energetic and ready to go about our days.
Thank you. I think that whole, from as we all know from functional medicine, this whole 5R program of, remove, replace, it's been a while, but repopulate, repair, and rebalance. But it's often that rebalance that often gets overlooked.
Yeah, big time.
There's no supplement for that, right? I mean, there is, but it's not going to be the supplement that helps that.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I don't know. You go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think people also get treatment fatigue, by the time they get to that place, right? And a lot of these people that we're all seeing are exhausted, right? Because they came into it exhausted. They've seen a lot of practitioners. They haven't gotten where they've needed to be. And then you're like, hang on, you just need to do this last piece. And they're like, oh, but I feel a little bit better. I think I'm good now. And you're like, well, if we don't do this piece, this is perhaps the most important part in the whole process, is the rebalancing for longevity and for proper production of short-chain fatty acids, and the neurotransmitters and all that kind of stuff.
Yes. I can tell a quick story about a patient regarding that. She came to me when she had already done a lot of different treatments for SIBO. And if any of our listeners are not familiar with SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, so having too much bacteria overgrowing on the small intestine, and that can really lead to a lot of different GI symptoms, from gas, bloating, irregular bowel movements, but also can lead to a lot of mood changes. And this patient was experiencing a lot of anxiety, and she had already done a lot of antibiotics, targeted antibiotics, even antimicrobials. And she was feeling like nothing was going to get rid of the SIBO. And it got to the point that we were like, let's stop trying to kill and actually focus on rebalancing your nervous system. And I don't know if you use this, Isabel, but there's that app, hypnotherapy app, to rebalance the gut-brain connection that is called Nerva. We did that 6-week program, and we were working with vagus nerve stimulation, as well as managing anxiety and just giving her gut what it needed, stimulating, like you said, digestive, they're stimulating basically digestion and working on the lifestyle. And it resolved, like she started feeling so much better. She was afraid to like test for SIBO again. But when she did eventually, after like 7 months, it was gone. And it was like such an important piece to address the nervous system for our body to be able to actually clear the overgrowth and imbalance of the
Totally. Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
I said sort of a similar but different thing to we treat kids here as well. And I said to we're having a brawl in the corner. The 13-year-old and the 5-month-old are having a problem. So I said to a mom this morning, I said, look, your son has very low levels of like commensal bacteria. He's having a lot of GI stuff. He's got H. pylori, he's got low levels of commensals. I said, low levels of good bacteria can feel just as much like dysbiosis, right? And he doesn't have any dysbiosis, really. His stool test looks good, but he's really low commensals. And just not having enough good stuff can feel like you've got SIBO or a lot of overgrown bad stuff and can behave the same way as well.
Yeah, and I've seen it be connected with alopecia as well. Patients even losing their hair, and they're like, I don't know what's going on. And sometimes we check nutrients are not that bad, but there might be just a relation to like low beneficial commensal bacteria.
So whether the quote unquote microbiome boat is tipped to the right with too much bacteria, too much inflammatory, or left with too little good bacteria, that's a really, really good point. I think it's something also that's kind of overlooked. I know one thing that our listeners are really interested right now in this kind of toxic world, toxic environment, a lot of stress going on. And this is like impacting not only their ability to, implement gut treatment plans, but also just like deal with life. So what are your kind of practical tips to support gut health, I guess in general, but also in specifically like some of these lifestyle and stress management tips that could be really helpful, just to kind of start with some of those basics.
You can take the floor, Isabel.
I should probably say, hey, well, let's start with Isabel since, we could do.
So, I think all of us have a tremendous amount of stress. 1 second. Araceli, will you take this one and I will be right back on?
Yeah, no problem. Actually, listening to her puppy, like dogs and pets can be such a great way to manage the stress. So of course, not when they're barking when you're trying to record a podcast, but other times for sure. I always say my dog is so good at bringing my cortisol levels down. But yeah, I would say one of the tips for vagus nerve stimulation that I often use with my patients is to generate vibration to the neck area. There's a lot of vagus nerve endings here in the neck area, either from gargling, and a good sign to know if the vagus nerve got activated is to see the eyes are watering. That could be a good way to know if there's vagus nerve activation. So gargling is something patients sometimes it's easy to remember because they can do it after brushing their teeth. So you just kind of connected with something that they're used to doing. So gargling could be an option, as well as humming or chanting that would still create that vibration in the neck area. And I recently learned about massaging 2 fingers in the front and 2 fingers in the back of the ears, massaging that area, followed by that VU exhale that also generates a lot of vibration, and also with the lips close together. So maybe at some point we can do a demo of some of these exercises. But yeah, it definitely has to do a lot with the deep belly breathing and the vibration to the neck area type of exercises that we practice with patients. Any particular tips, Isabel, that you tend to use with your patients or clients?
So yes, pets are always helpful until they're chaotic. This is my first week having the 3 of them, so I'm sorry for the chaos. Half of them are out of the office. So in terms of what are we putting into our bodies? How is that affecting our microbiome? I think everybody's obsessed with sugar, which as they should be, but I feel like there's too much pressure on removing this and don't drink this. And there's just a lot of I'm going to use the word fear-mongering or sentence fear-mongering. And I think definitely you want to do what you can to cut back on sugar, but I have more people with gut issues that come to me freaked out about what to eat, feeling I've heard some crazy things that other practitioners have said to people, can't have more than 80 grams of carbohydrate, don't eat bananas, don't eat carrots. By the way, carrots have beta carotene, which is so good for your, mucosal lining. We want to really be expanding our foods, expanding what we're eating fruits, not too much of anything, because too much of anything is bad. But I actually think the more narrow we get with our food, the worse it is for us and the worse for our nervous systems, the worse for the microbiome, right? So I think there's a certain amount of, you gotta like be human and live your life. Try to eat more vegetables. Do what you can to eat like natural fruit sugars if you can, right? But I think the amount of stress that you're creating for yourself out of trying to eat this food and this food and this food and avoiding all the rest of them, it's probably actually creating more trauma for your body and your microbiome, right? Than like enjoying a little bit of cake with your family. It's somebody's birthday. Like that actually is probably healthier for you than the feeling you're going to have trying to like sit on your hands and avoid it. That's my feeling on it. I don't know how you guys feel about it.
Yes, I always try to put in more of what's going to help you heal before we even start to like remove anything that might be contributing. But I feel like there's so much of this culture right now of like, let's take out, that it just creates so much poor relationship with food that then it's like really difficult to heal. Like really working on like food relationships, it can be a lot of like work. So I think it's also very important to put a lot of emphasis on what we're putting in and what's going to help us heal, not just so much focusing on avoiding. So totally agree.
I 1,000% agree with both of you. I mean, really, just hearing you both speak is so validating, and I hope listeners out there. And, I know that sometimes maybe someone has diabetes and they do need to lower their carbs, to some degree. They have heart disease, they might need to have certain things, but it's really going from a fearful gut kind of attitude to a fortified gut attitude where we can be, variety is the spice of life. We can really nourish that microbiome. And the other thing is, eating a takeout, eating from a plastic container, takeout isolated, and also, wondering if I'm eating the right thing and, all of that versus eating that cake with your family or, eating at a wedding or a birthday party. Like that's going to be, like you said, ultimately more healing.
Yeah, I think that's important, right? I think the gray area is the most uncomfortable place for people to be, right? And I hate to generalize, but especially my guys that I work with, right? Gray, like they're black or white. And a lot of women can be this way too, or whatever you identify as. But really for our health, we can't be black or white. We have to find the middle ground. And that is truly like how we perpetuate health and, the health of the gut, the health of the microbiome, the health of our brains, all of that. Because I think too much we're stuck into this or that, right? And I think we can have this and that, but we have to find the right balance.
It's kind of a branch off question from what we just talked about with not really a black or white thing. There's a lot of nuance. It's kind of one of these Shakespearean questions here: to test or not to test, right? Are we going to GI map them or not, or whatnot, or any test? Yeah, what are both your thoughts on that? Maybe Araceli, you want to go first with that?
So GI map test or not to GI map test? So we run a lot of them, but I will honestly very rarely test somebody off the bat without getting to know them first. I like to know my people because I'm going to read the test and use the test completely differently. Completely differently is a strong word. It's going to be much more helpful in how we use the test if I know the person. And I like to know my people. And I just also don't believe in like willy-nilly, like just ordering tons of tests, right? We have access to so much stuff, but we want to choose the right thing for the right person, right? And the right thing for the right person, like might be a GI map later or a toxicity test later and working on foundational stuff and then see how they feel. Because often correcting like what they're eating and how they're eating and whatever gets us far enough that I'm like, well, we can do it, but like we might not need it. And I like to be able to do that.
I totally agree. Tend to like, we have an initial appointment. We like talk a lot about their symptoms or like history because of course we treat the patient, not the test. So it's a lot of the results we might focus or like prioritize certain things based on how they're feeling and not so much like everything that showed up. Some things that might show up might be like asymptomatic or like causing more of the symptoms. So yeah, just trying to like personalize it based on the patient, of course.
Yes, absolutely. Just going back to one of the questions about brain health, and I know that attention is playing a central role now in a lot of kind of our daily lives. Attention, or I should say, it's lack of attention. Kind of this focus. ADD, ADHD kind of picture. I was actually walking down the hall with a patient on my way out after a visit today, and I was like, it seems like, or they or me were like, it seems like everyone has attention issues now, especially with the smartphones. What are your thoughts on the role of the gut and microbiome and just gut health in general in maintaining focus and attention?
Yeah, definitely when it comes to the neurotransmitters, we talk a lot about like serotonin because yes, that can be like 90% production like up to 90% production in the gut, and that can affect like how happy we are and like feeling good. But there's also a role that can influence like dopamine levels that is definitely more related to like our capacity to focus, as well as the absorption of amino acids that are going to be the building blocks to create those neurotransmitters to feel like more focused. So definitely both like the health of our microbiome and how well really to absorb amino acids that are those building blocks in protein, we need stomach acid. So like really having good levels of stomach acid, being able to digest protein correctly, and getting those like building blocks to produce like neurotransmitters endogenously to be able to boost our brain health, boost our cognition, boost our focus is really important.
Yeah, and I'm finding a lot of kind of crossover between like my high histamine folks and people who are having a lot of like ADD, ADHD, neurological inflammatory response to food and environment, combination of the two of them. That's been my life, my personal history also. I was on ADD meds for 20 years and spent a lot of time trying to figure out why my handwriting was like different in different cases. On pens I'd like, and then I'm like, why is my handwriting so messy? I was reading the book by James Greenblatt at one point, which is called Finally Focused, which is a great book to read for anybody out there who's like curious about all this stuff. And he talks about in the 70s, they would like give kids foods and then watch their handwriting 2 hours later, see what their nervous system and their was inflamed from. And they could check the differences in the kids' handwriting from just, and I literally was like, eureka. That is like the most incredible thing I've ever read, because it was like so, I was like on a plane and I think out loud, I was like, yes, because it was like so validating for me. It's a great book. It's definitely worth reading, but it talks a lot about, it's like histaminergic pathway, inflammatory reaction in like the body and the brain and the focus and attention and right, all of that, which is super relevant. I can't tell you that I don't have a person with like a histamine toxicity experience, which also relates back to gut health, of course, that doesn't have trouble focusing and paying attention. It's really interesting.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you mentioned about the histamine, because it can really be that there's like factors in your body that it's like triggering mast cell degranulation to produce more histamine that can be related to maybe they have like mycotoxins and like too much like mycotoxin in their body, but also the microbiome plays a role in how much they're degrading histamine or if they have like histamine producing bacteria. So like balancing the gut itself can be so helpful for like patients with like either mast cell activation or just kind of histamine intolerance. But yeah, absolutely, that can impact a lot on their focus and like brain fog.
Speaking of brain health, another hot topic right now is microplastics.
Yes.
And even they've done studies they've shown that the brain is relatively accumulating more microplastics for a lot of people. They've done, autopsies on people with Alzheimer's, and then they have more plastics, and people that don't have Alzheimer's and things like that. So I know all of us are really into brain health, neuroinflammation and things like that. I'm really, really curious about your thoughts about A, how can we avoid microplastics? B, once they're in, and we know they're in all of us, right? In a way, how do we get rid of them?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. On a day-to-day basis, I'm more worried about heavy metals than I am to plastics. That said, I don't drink out of plastic water bottles. I don't eat out of plastic containers. I really don't order in very much. So I also don't feel like I have a super high footprint with it. But like I'll run urine tox tests on people and you can check BPA levels. I like to do that. A lot more companies are doing that. I've certainly seen a lot of people come back with elevated BPA levels. So obviously removing it from their day-to-day, but also using specific binders and stuff to help move the BPA levels. I don't know, which is just an assay for me on like plastics and microplastic, buildup. Nothing's perfect. The yoga pants I like to buy on Amazon probably aren't helping.
Isabel, can we piggyback on that? Would you mind talking about heavy metals and, your thoughts there?
Yeah. I mean, I see a lot of toxicity here. I kind of fell into it because of my own journey years ago, and I couldn't find anybody who knew what to do about it. Now we're talking about it a lot more than we were at that point. So I seem to have just people like a magnet, So we're doing a lot of tox testing these days. There's a lot of confusion I find about like blood testing versus urine testing. Oh, but my blood test was fine. And I'm like, you are so clearly a heavy metal person, right? And they're like, but it was negative. And I'm like, well, what was tested? You really need to test urine if you want to see metals in a longer range window. Blood is really, as you guys know, just last 30 days or so, can contribute to a lot of soft tissue inflammation, can contribute to dysbiosis, thinking about what's happening in the brain. I've been listening to some interesting podcasts recently about talking about, Alzheimer's risk and various different metals. Metals are a problem. They come from those yoga pants I just talked about, through the skin, fast fashion, various cups, that we have here. I just replaced, this is a swig cup, and I think they do a pretty good job. But you don't want to have a plastic, you don't want to have either a paint or a wrap that goes up to the top because of the risk of chipping. And the chipping, it's really the glazes and the paints on your mugs and your glasses, warm beverage containers that are metal, that we want to not be consuming any kind of chipped rims. So a lot of the companies, for those of you guys listening, I'm holding a cup up right now, giving a demonstration, but the lip is stainless and it doesn't come up. The wrap, I have like a cowhide wrap on this mug. It doesn't come up to the surface. So I threw out, I replaced with some, Yeti, that is dishwasher safe and such. But looking at the cups and you're drinking out of every day is super important. Thinking about your pipes, your cookware, stuff like that. I'm not totally sure about this green nonstick pan stuff. It kind of freaks me out. I just use stainless steel most of the time. Right? I don't know what that is. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I think heavy metals is definitely another, often overlooked area. I have to ask this because I like chocolate, but what are your thoughts on chocolate and heavy metals? I guess, should you just enjoy the piece of chocolate cake, or?
So, so long and short of it is yes, because life is short, right? Life is short and we have so many things that contribute and we can't really pinpoint one or another. Major things that we probably shouldn't be doing, but right, please eat that chocolate cake with your family. That said, literally before this call was on with a client who was in London, I woke up with horrible red eyelids and ate a ton of chocolate last night. And she is a metals tox patient. And I had to have like an SOS call with her because she's so inflamed. She did go out and she had baba ganoush and she had some lemon juice and other stuff that was also very histaminergic. But outside of the US, the chocolate is typically cleaner because there are better regulations on all sorts of things food related. But still, cocoa and chocolate and, all the bits and pieces in there, it can be a higher metal food. I definitely feel better. I have a tox history myself, as I've said, and I definitely feel better when I don't eat as much chocolate. Sad.
Yeah, I think I agree that it can come in set. But one interesting thing that I was going to mention about a patient that I have is that she has Hashimoto, so she has like an autoimmune condition, and we know how toxins and heavy metals can be a trigger for that. And when we run her toxic tests, she had elevated lead, and she also had a few other metals, and so we started detoxing metals, and within 6 months. And it's always important to talk about time frame with toxins because they don't disappear from one day to the other because it accumulates in years of exposure. So then we also need to be patient when detoxifying, and we don't want to detox too fast. But after 6 months of detox, she managed to bring the levels back, and she does a lot of amazing changes with her lifestyle and changes in nutrition. But the one thing she cannot stop eating is chocolate every single day. And I was nervous that was going to impact how much success we've had with the detox, but she still was able to do a lot of improvements, thankfully. So because she's very reasonable with the amounts also, and we were focusing on brands that were tested to be lower. So I think it's definitely being careful with that too. But what we did definitely notice and found out later after opening a lot of the detox pathways was that there was a lot more mycotoxins coming out. And that was probably a much bigger piece from probably both, but I think she was also having a bigger storage of mycotoxins and then she tested her home, and her exposure to mycotoxins in the environment was really, really bad. So I think she wasn't probably able to detox heavy metals. Our body has the ability to detox. We can probably handle small pieces at a time, but when our body already is being exposed to such a high level of toxins to the environment, then it makes it really difficult to detox anything else that we might be eating or getting exposed to. So it's just kind of so important to look at the whole picture and just see what we need to address and what's the bigger player. And probably we need to address everything, but I'm totally with you, Isabel, when you mentioned of yes, we're probably not going to be drastic and say you can never have chocolate again or a chocolate cake again or anything, even when there might be some like heavy metals present.
I eat it, but I'm not eating it every day. And I eat dessert every day. It's just like, for me, it's like just the way I like to live my life. And there's things I don't care about, but dessert is one thing I do care about. But I am no longer eating like chocolate from a bar every day. So I might get a bar and have some for a week and then to the break.
So now we have to go around and talk about, I'm excited about this. What is your favorite dessert? Why do you like it? What do you love so much about it?
I need a moment to think about that. I'm such a dessert eater.
I can go directly on that. You talk about dessert, I'll be the first one to go.
You have a whole nother podcast on desserts.
Oh my God, yes. We can totally do another episode only on dessert. I would say, because I feel like more people need to know that this exists, but are like desserts with like lucuma, which is a Peruvian fruit that it's like the best thing on earth. So I know there's not a lot of places in the US that have it, but if you go to a Peruvian restaurant and you order a dessert, order it with lucuma, you won't regret it. It's like the best thing ever. And it also has like a lot of carotene. So if you want a health benefit to have it with, yep, that's a good one to go. I think Dr. Wong, you've had it, right? The lucuma ice cream?
Yes, it's so good. I definitely recommend that. I know exactly what you're talking about too. Yes.
I need to go and search this out.
We can go together. Let's go have a
Next time you're in DC.
Oh, yep.
Make a special trip for it.
Exactly.
What's my favorite dessert? So, oh my gosh, I don't discriminate. So it just depends on the day of the week. I do love these little Good Pop little ice cream sandwiches that are dairy-free and gluten-free. Love those. I love dairy-free ice cream. Well, let's start with that. I love dairy-free ice cream. It's a little dairy-free soft serve. Pressed juice-free makes a good one. It's not like totally desserty, but it's a good start. And Sweet Lauren's cookies, they're gluten-free, dairy-free, egg-free. They're delicious. I don't have an affiliation with any of these companies. I'm just naming some names because they're great. They're super great, and they're easy, and they're vegan, which means you can also eat the cookie dough raw, which is also nice. I also never mind a cobbler. Love like a fruit, something with like a crust, a tasty crust. You know, if I could choose one, I can't choose one. I also love carrot cake and coconut cake. So I don't eat those things on a regular basis. What am I eating on a nightly basis? I probably would have like a little like Good Pop ice cream sandwich, or last night there were some almond cookies at my house. So I had like a almond cookie or two. You know, stuff like I literally had anaphylaxis to almonds when I turned 30 years old due to this toxicity stuff. So now I can eat anything, and it's actually more difficult having had all these food allergies, and I was allergic to like dairy and gluten for my whole life and eggs, and now I'm not. I now actually have to be a lot more discerning about my choices because it was so easy to just like not choose other things when I couldn't. And now that I can, I went on a little bit of a personal bender in terms of like, I was eating dairy for the first time in my life. I was eating eggs and my body got really angry, interestingly. So I've dialed it back, but you know.
That's exciting. I'm so glad you're able to more. It just speaks to the power of healing the gut to really tolerate that. Kind of going back to the gut, energy, brain. This is probably the first time on any of the podcasts we've ever done that I have two amazing functional practitioners right in front of me. So amazing. So I kind of want to give you a case. So this wasn't even on the list of things, but I'm just kind of your typical 45-year-old female. They might have two animal kids or two human kids or something, or, you know, or maybe three in Isabel's case that you're watching right now. And they have fatigue, right? They have some energy issues with fatigue. They have brain fog. What should this person do? What should this person do in terms of their eating, their gut, their lifestyle habits? Just kind of walk us through how you would think about a person like this, which we probably see like all the time, right?
Yeah, I mean, my first question is like, what are you eating? How are you sleeping? Those are like my first two questions, right? Because again, a lot of things can be resolved within those two. For that person, I'm assuming it's a woman because you're right.
A woman.
What's happening with your hormones? Where are you in the land of menopause, perimenopause? You know, what are your primary symptoms, right? And then from there, I might choose a test or two to run. Maybe it's a stool test. Maybe it's a Dutch test. Maybe it's a toxicity test. Or maybe it's a nutrient analysis test, right? Maybe they've had 3 kids. Thinking of a particular patient who's had 3 kids and she's just really exhausted. Turns out it was a toxicity problem, but I checked all of her micronutrients first. Things were better than I expected, right? You know, checking somebody's nutritional status and then seeing optimizing and then seeing how the body behaves from there can easily do the works. But often for a woman like that, we need to support progesterone balance, clean out some of the cobwebs in the closet, which could be in the gut, could be in the land of tox or others, and kind of filling the tank, right? Topping us off in terms of like our nutritional status. Often, depleted people just really need both beneficial bugs in the gut and also beneficial nutrition. So that's like sort of where I'm thinking, optimizing sleep, optimizing, making sure they're not doing HIIT workouts at 6 a.m. every day, sort of thing.
Absolutely. I'd like to think about our work like health detectives, and just kind of, we can have two patients, same age, both females, both fatigue, and the root cause be so different. Maybe one was like just iron deficiency, and the other one has like Lyme disease and mold toxicity. And they can be like presenting with exactly the same symptom. So it's really digging and peeling the layers of the onion to really identify like what's really going on. And each person is so different, even if they had the exact same symptoms. So I totally agree in the areas that I would like start asking and like trying to identify. And based on what areas they're like sharing of like what they're eating or how they're sleeping or what's their lifestyle or exposures or what might be going on, what type of testing we might want to do to like understand what's the underlying cause or the hormones that you mentioned.
So I know a lot of people out there listening, and certainly a lot of people that, and thank you both for those answers, amazing, that come into our clinics. I'm sure it's about, they have stress, they have fatigue, they have brain fog, but also a lot of them have been, I think we can just be real here. They've been traumatized by the medical system. They've been dismissed. They don't know where to go. They're going to Dr. Google. So kind of curious if you could share a patient or client success story related to gut health. It's all about also having that, lighting that like flame or lighting that light of hope, right? Of like, yes, there is this pathway, right? We've talked today about how the gut influences energy levels and brain function, neurotransmitters, and different practical ways to manage stress and sleep. But for someone that maybe for so long, right, I'm sure we've all seen these, and we've all probably personally also experienced this, hasn't gotten better. And just hearing this kind of, you can get better because, this person, that we might be talking about now is like the person that's listening here.
Totally. And when you mentioned that, one of my birth patients when I started practicing functional medicine comes to mind because she came in, she was young, she was 13-year-old female, came in with her parents, like totally like stressed out and traumatized by the conventional system. And one of the first things that like they mentioned, like the mom probably, was that she was having a lot of like nausea, like chronic diarrhea, heartburn, and she was 13, so she wasn't able to go to school. And basically from a conventional standpoint, they had ruled out all the big areas, like making sure that there was no like IBD or any other type of big diagnosis. But when they really couldn't find anything, of course, the diagnosis was IBS, and they gave some like antispasmodics for the pain. And then it was just basically that she had to learn to live with it. And she repeated that to me, like crying, that she wasn't like, she could never get used to living like that, and that she couldn't go back to work and everything. So of course we did our usual of investigating what was going on. And it was basically H. pylori and SIBO, and we treated, and she's been okay for like, I've been seeing her now for like 3 years or so. And she's been totally fine, going to school, living her life and being totally happy. So yeah, I think it totally, patients that get to us can be like traumatized and affected by not really understanding what's going on or getting to like the treatment that they need. And yeah, that's why I'm so passionate about what we all do here.
Yeah, we get a lot of like really like practitioner hopped, which is, I'm always like, just, you got to give it some time. I think people are very like quick to jump. Like this, none of this happened overnight. I think the internet like doesn't help people either, because they're like this person. So, I find the people that are most traumatized are the people who've seen multiple practitioners, and maybe the practitioner like was on their way to helping them, but the person didn't give them enough time. And then I also find that there are, certain types of modalities that for complex cases just really are not helpful. I have a patient who came to me terrified to eat anything, which is very common, as I mentioned prior to, and was having just a chronic diarrhea. She's like 70 years old. I've had actually a couple that come to mind, like 70s women, and they're like not eating anything, chronic diarrhea. One in particular had been muscle tested, which I do believe in muscle testing. I will not say I don't, but I find that it can complicate complex cases and can also create more food fears for people in cases where it might not be the right choice for the person at the time. So this person had been basically given a super short list of foods to eat because they had been muscle tested, and she wasn't eating anything. She was having so much anxiety. Turns out she had a ton of dysbiosis, which is not surprising given, so we ran a GI map, super colorful, right? Which again, we see a lot. And turns out we did the work and she's not having diarrhea. We're working on rebalancing, right? I've had to have many pep talks with her about the fact that she needs to stick with it, right? Because she feels better and she's like, I want to be done. And I'm like, amazing. Well, we're still in it. You're feeling better because you've done the work. So we need to just like keep going on the work, but no more diarrhea. You know, she was having a ton of histamine. I think actually a lot of the diarrhea was coming from histamine, and no more histamine because we dealt with, in her case, it was a lot of dysbiosis that was causing it. There's a small amount of toxicity that we're currently dealing with, which I think is making up the rest of the diarrhea. But, you know, when I think of somebody who was like eating nothing, had lost a lot of weight, freaking out about what she's eating, having a ton of diarrhea, and we, you know, kind of slowed things down, worked on the gut, stopped the diarrhea, gave her life back, because she can now like go out for dinner, feel more confident, enjoy her life, be with her kids or grandkids. She was definitely one who was top of mind when it comes to like mostly gut.
So we see that the gut can really impact all of health, just not just digestive health, you know, even, you know, other aspects of physical health, certainly mental and emotional health. And I just wanted to kind of wrap this up today with really understanding from both of you what it means to be, you know, in this space of functional nutrition and nourishment and functional medicine. And I guess just your thoughts about how we heal from the inside out on a really, really deep level.
You want to take this one first?
Me or you?
You can go ahead. I'll finish.
Sure.
I got to think about this one.
Yeah, I know. We need like a minute to like reflect with like the type of work that we do. But honestly, I feel like it's the most rewarding to just be able to look at the full picture and like use the different tools that we have in our toolbox. A lot of the times when people hear like functional nutrition, just because they hear that side of nutrition, they just think of like what's on the plate, and that we're going to be like focusing a lot on like just the food. And although it's a very important piece, and it like, of course, we need to be eating like foods that are going to like nourish our body, that are going to allow our body to heal. It goes way beyond what's on our plate. And a lot of like different lifestyle interventions, like herbal medicine, and as you probably heard myself and Isabel talk a lot about like toxicity or like histamine or other topics that people may not even think that we're going to be looking at. So I just think that it's just this like holistic way to approach health that is so helpful, and then just so rewarding when we see patients or people just regain their life, because that's what, as we were mentioning before, hopping on, we're all human beings, we're all people. So even if our practitioners, we have gone through a lot of these things ourselves, and like healing ourselves and sharing that knowledge with other people to help them heal themselves, it's like just such a beautiful way of like looking at it. And yeah, we're always happy to help more of our patients and more people.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's a 360 journey, right? I think you have to somewhere, somehow, like fake it till you make it in terms of like your own belief that you can heal. You don't think you can, you probably can't. And no matter whether you're doing all the right things, no matter whether you're taking the right things, like if you really don't think you can, like you need to, and I say to people all the time, you can be neutral. You don't have to be like, woo, I'm going to heal, right? But you got to be careful about the things you say to yourself about your journey and about your practitioner. If you're not vibing with your practitioner, find another one. There's a lot of wonderful, incredible people out there that can help you. But like being mindful about what you say to yourself about your own journey, about what you say to yourself about your propensity to heal is all like super important in the big picture. I would say like not discounting the things that are not sexy, the basics. People get really caught up in like the sexy stuff, right? Like the infrared lights and the NAD drips and But like, what about your sleep? What about your exercise? Like, what about your relationships? What about your food? Because all those things can make you sick. And then on top of that, we have the rest of the things that need to heal. But I think if you really want to heal your body, it's like, what? Who said it? Right. It was Einstein, right? Doing the same thing twice and expecting the same and different outcome. That comment, that's insanity. You have to allow yourself to look in the mirror and say, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to get the guidance that I need to help me if I'm having trouble in areas of breath work or slowing down, or I feel like I can't get off the treadmill, metaphorically speaking, and I'm running myself into the ground. None of that's going to help you heal, right? I was like a 6 a.m. worker outer, and like, I'm getting out of bed at 7:30 now, right? I work out if I feel like it. I'm in a different place than I was 5 years ago when I was really in it, but I'm still practicing that way. Am I taking care of my body? My brain and my soul want to go, go, go. And my body's like, can you just sit in a chair for the day, please? I think that's what I need more. And I think there's a lot to be said about taking a step back, being humbled by what you know you need to do, but you may not want to, right? And saying, if I really want to make a change in my body, I really have to make a change I got to check my environment. I got to check my relationships. I got to check my own self and how I'm taking care of myself and the things I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, the basics. And then from there, you do the rest of the things with the person that you trust, because that's really how you're going to heal, right? You can't just take a few supplements and continue to get up at whatever, 6, 5:30, box jump for an hour and a half. And then you can't do that. You got to rework what you're doing.
Box jump. Yeah, we're talking about really these strategies that are, thank you both, this is amazing answers, really the long-term strategy for vitality, the long-term strategy for healing. Thank you both. You're both so amazing. I'm really excited to have both of you on today. Thank you so much for joining this podcast. And we definitely have to have some dessert.
Yeah, we do.
Come to DC, Lucuma ice cream for sure. And maybe some of those other gluten-free things you're saying too, Isabel. Just wanted to kind of give both of you a shout out, and just if you could tell the listeners where you could find you, or your website, clinic information and things like that, just to kind of just a little bit of shout out to both of you.
I'm Isabel Smith Nutrition on Instagram, and I'm isabelsmithnutrition.com.
And I'm Araceli Benavides, and you can find me at Capital Integrative Health website, and probably some on the Instagram too.
And they're both on awesomepeople.com. I don't know if that's just a dad joke, but and I'm really, really excited to share this episode with all of our listeners, because gut health really is the key, but it goes much more than only nutrition, even only gut health. That's what I've learned today. It really goes back to kind of this deep healing, and so that we can all get well and we can stay well and we become the CEO of our own health, as like to say here. So thank you both for coming on today. Really appreciate both of you.
Me.
And much gratitude and love. And we will hopefully see everyone soon over some bowls of desserts, I think. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
This is Moose, who was tormenting us while we podcast. He's a 9-week-old Yorkie, and he likes to watch TV, and he has green eyes.
Love him. Thank you. Moose is going to be a celebrity now. So yeah.
Moosey.